First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming this morning. I really do appreciate you being here. My name is Mike Kendrick, and I'm the Associate Dean of Global Business and the Director of the Center for Connectedness and Collaboration, and it's the center that is putting this on this morning. And I thought I'd just take a couple of minutes and talk about the center and what we do. And I ran across this several years ago, and the next two things I think explain, at least it does for me, what the center is all about. The first is a quote by Mark Twain, and it says, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of earth all one's lifetime." And then I was in Prague in September, and I ran across this saying by St. Augustine, and it's, "The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page." So I think that starts to describe what our center is about. We came up with an idea while we were traveling in India in 2010. And the notion of the center is that in our world today, we've got to figure out how to collaborate. But you can't collaborate until you learn how to connect. And so that's the reason for a name, Center for Global Connectedness and Collaboration. The challenge we have is to develop global leaders. And how do we influence people who are different than we are, who work for other organizations, who may even be independent contractors or work in a matrix structure? And that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. For the past couple of years, we've worked on the idea of global mindset. And there are three areas that we concentrate on. One is global business savvy, and that's understanding global strategy, marketing strategy, as well as supply chains, as well as risk. And so when you're starting to do business in other parts of the world, those are all things that you have to understand. In addition to that, what we have found in the data that we collect helps us understand this better all the time, that we also have to understand cultures from different parts of the world. We also have to understand geography, as well as history, as well as religion, and who are important people from different parts of the world. In addition to that, you also, if you're going to do business globally, you have to understand political issues, you have to understand economic issues, and you have to stay up to date on what's going on in the world. And then finally, what we do is we work on how do you establish relationships with people from different parts of the world. What we know about organizations is that trust is a driver of an organization, of any organization. And so how do we establish trust with people who are not from the same backgrounds that we are? There are some sayings from incidentally, Global Mindsets out of Thunderbird University in Glendale, Arizona, one of the renowned global business or international business schools. And just 3 or 4 sayings that I think describes global mindset. One, global mindset means to me that the individual has a global passport, but it's in their head. It's the ability to understand the similarity and differences among cultures and their reasons. So it's not just understanding the differences in cultures, it's also understanding the reasons behind that. I think it's a natural curiosity to learn more about other cultures. Rather than being frustrated and intimidated by differences, enjoying them and seeking them out because you find them fascinating. And then my favorite, is it's being comfortable with being uncomfortable in uncomfortable environments. And what we do with clients and students is that's what we try and do. We try and put them in situations where they're uncomfortable, but they have to learn how to be comfortable there. Today, and we will continue our work on global mindset, in some conversations that I have had over the last couple of weeks, specifically with the folks out at Thunderbird, we're starting to move in a little bit different direction. Our research will be in the area of globally diverse or dispersed teams. So that's the research that we're starting to do and starting to take a look at. So if you know of people who are interested in global mindset or globally diverse or dispersed teams, please let us know. We would love to be able to work with them. So please enjoy breakfast. Thank you for coming again, and then we'll get back up in just a few minutes, introduce our guests, and we'll have a presentation. Oh, and sorry, Bennett, I would like for you to come up and give the invocation. This is Bennett Rigney. One of the things we're doing today is that you may find is a little bit different is there's going to be an awful lot of student involvement in this. Bennett is a student in the College of Business. He also spent last spring as an exchange student at Hong Kong College of Management in Hong Kong. So we're trying to include our Hong Kong students. And so, Bennett.
Thank you so much. Please pray with me. Lord, we come before you this morning to ask that you walk beside us through every step of our journey. This morning, we ask that you give each and every person in this room strength and the desire to follow your will. We give you thanks, O Lord, for food in a world where many walk in hunger, for friends in a world where many walk alone, for faith in a world where many walk in fear. We give you thanks, O Lord. All the honor and glory is due you. Amen.
In September of 2005, President Lowry, Randy Lowry, became president of Lipscomb University. And since that time, we have seen significant growth in the university. But I want to talk about one particular area of growth that we have seen over the last 7 or 8 years. And that's the area of global. In May of 2006, and President Lowry got here in September of 2005, in May of 2006, the College of Business does its first global trip. That trip is to Europe. And then in May of 2007, we began our trips to Hong Kong. As a matter of fact, President Lowry led the first trip to Hong Kong. And I have been very fortunate because I have been able to go back to Hong Kong every year except for one since then. Wonderful city. A few years after that, we start something called a professional MBA. And as a part of that professional MBA, we required every student to have a global experience. And then a couple of years after that, we decided that we needed to relook our curriculum for the night MBA program. And as a part of redoing that curriculum, we now require that every graduate student or every MBA student, every Masters of Human Resources student, and every Masters of Management student have a global experience. And we have had some absolutely wonderful trips. We have been to Hong Kong every year since 2007. We have also been to places like Buenos Aires. We have been to Barcelona. We have been to, just got back from Prague. The Masters of Management students were in Singapore in September. So we have seen a significant growth in our global courses, and we actually call our course now our global business course, and and we require a lot of things out of our students on that. So President Lowry, thank you so much for your leadership in global. It's obviously an area I'm very interested in. And thank you for being here this morning. And I want to introduce you guys, President Randy Lowry.
Well, good morning to everyone. I am sure that one of the greatest compliments one can get is to have an idea and to have others pick up on that idea. I mean, you know, those of us that try to be a bit visionary have lots of ideas, and often they fall flat and nobody picks up on them, nothing ever happens. Occasionally there's an idea that other people pick up on, and that's got to be a tremendous compliment. That certainly happened in terms of coming to this university in 2005 and encouraging a little bit more of a global perspective and a global engagement. The negative to that is the College of Business stole my trip. Because I haven't been back to Hong Kong since 2005. That was my trip. That was something I had done for years and years at Pepperdine Law School. It was something that was in my DNA and in my system, and you stole it. But I can't think of a nicer group of folks to steal my ideas than you all, and I can't think of something more important for our students than that. I say often, Hong Kong is my favorite city in the world. And I say over and over again, you got to go there before you die. And it is just a wonderful, wonderful mix of British and Chinese culture. It's a wonderful mix of people from all over the world and intense commerce and wonderful beauty once you're outside a bit. It is just, I think, a remarkable place. I never will forget that my first visit there, I was teaching for City University, where I was on the faculty for a number of years. And teaching at the law school there, I had been there 6 weeks, which was a long time to be away from America, a long time to be away from Pepperdine, where I was teaching. And I remember Rhonda left early, and she said, look, I got to go. You've still got another week or two here. Just bring all the bags. Now, if you know anything about Hong Kong, shopping is like a big deal. Is that right? And so she left me in this little apartment. The street I remember was La Salido. And I used to get in a cab and they'd say, where do you want to go? And I'd say, La Salido. And they'd look at me and I'd say, La Salido. And they'd look at me. I'd say, La Salido. And about the 8th time I said it, they'd, oh, La Salido. And we'd go shooting off to where I lived because obviously, what? Yeah, it took a while, you know. And so I get back to La Salido. La Salido, Rhonda leaves all the stuff. And so here I am going to the airport, and I have all the baggage and all that stuff you'd have for 2 people for 6 weeks, plus all the stuff she bought. And I'm crammed in this little cab, and we're on our way to this absolutely magnificent airport. And I remember about halfway there, I turned and looked around, and I thought to myself, 6 weeks isn't long enough. Now that's amazing. To go somewhere you've never been before, to have a cross-cultural experience that every day is challenging and invigorating, and to turn around, look back, and say, 6 weeks is not even enough. So you're going to have a delightful time this morning as you hear from a representative of Hong Kong, someone who probably can bridge both the Chinese and the British culture, someone who is here to represent that entity, but also not just to share the business side of it, but to share with us the cultural side, the people side. And I would just encourage you to be attentive, to be engaged in this presentation, because someday you may have that opportunity, and I would wish it for you, even if it was my trip, and even if this college stole it, and even if I've never been back since. I would hope for all of you that wonderful experience. Great to have you, Steve, and it's our pleasure to have your company today. Thank you all.
Thank you, President Lowry. It's also one of my favorite cities. Last year, there were 3 students who are sitting right back here who are our Global Hope students who were on the trip with me last May. And one of my favorite places to go, and I know it's one of President Lowry's favorite places to go, is to watch the light show from the lobby bar at the Intercontinental Hotel. It is a fabulous place to watch the light show, especially when it's pouring down rain outside, because these three students were standing down on the harbor, and it was literally pouring rain that night. So great city, wonderful place. The culture there, as Dr. Lowry mentioned, the combination, one of the most cosmopolitan places I have ever been. And we are very fortunate today to have Steve Barclay. Steve is the director of Hong Kong's Economic and Trade Office in New York. And he has been there since, he's a long-time person in that job. He's been there since July of 2014. Prior to this, he was in a similar position in Sydney or in Australia. And prior to that, he has worked in the public sector as a reform advocate and internal management consultant in the government's efficiency unit for nearly a decade. He has served in a wide variety of posts with policy responsibilities, including consumer protection, intellectual property, housing, and environmental protection. He has served as a district officer in Hong Kong and also as Hong Kong's economic and commercial representative in Brussels. He has also twice been responsible for drafting the chief executive's policy address. So quite a lot of experience in Hong Kong. He was telling me earlier that he went to Hong Kong in 1979 to be there for 3 years, and now it's 2014, so that's been quite a number of years. So it's my privilege to introduce to you Steve Barclay.
Thank you very much, Mike, and good morning to all of you. Talking about compliments, to receive a full house in this weather at this time on a Friday morning, that's the biggest compliment I've had for many years. Thank you very much. Now, I'm just going to speak for a few minutes, because I know that you need to be out the door at 9 o'clock, and I think we'll probably get drilled down into what you're interested in more if we get into the question and answers quickly, rather than listening to me droning on for 30 minutes and only give you a couple of opportunities for questions. So I will try and finish what I've got to say in 10 minutes, and then I'll try and answer any questions that you have as honestly as I can. Now, you might be wondering why a Brit is standing here in front of you representing the Hong Kong government. It's because of our constitution. The basic law, which is Hong Kong's mini constitution, provides, amongst many other things, that civil servants serving in Hong Kong before 1997, including overseas civil servants, may continue after 1997 on terms and conditions no less favourable than before. So if the New York Times or CNN tell you that China is not complying with the basic law, Hong Kong's mini constitution, you can respond that you have seen the living embodiment of the basic law. Excuse me. You will have seen on CNN, BBC World, front pages of the New York Times and so on, that Hong Kong is capturing some attention at the moment. You would be forgiven for believing that Hong Kong is on the way to hell, that it's about to collapse, Beijing is about to send the tanks in. Well, I've just come back from Hong Kong 3 weeks ago now, I spent 2 weeks there. We have some new challenges to deal with. Social media is making engagement with the community a new challenge, but I can assure you that I have no scars. I wasn't tear gassed, and that Hong Kong is more or less carrying on as normal. But I'll delve a little deeper into that later. Now, just a little bit of historical context. Hong Kong was a British colony for about 150 years until 1997. Part of Hong Kong was ceded to Britain in perpetuity, but part was only on a 99-year lease which expired on the 30th of June 1997. So about the time I arrived in Hong Kong, people started fretting about what was going to happen in 97. That resulted in negotiations initiated by Margaret Thatcher and Deng Xiaoping that took place between 1982 and 1984 on the future of Hong Kong. That led to an agreement called the Joint Declaration, which provided for the arrangements for Hong Kong after 1997. In a nutshell, the agreement said Hong Kong's way of life will continue for 50 years as is after 1997, so until 2047, under the one country, two systems concept. Sovereignty would transfer back to China, but otherwise Hong Kong would have a high degree of autonomy in all matters except foreign affairs and defense. A high degree of autonomy, not independence, not total autonomy. And that's important to remember. It's behind essentially what the challenges that we're facing in Hong Kong today. And basically, Hong Kong, after 97, retained its own government, its own judiciary, its own legal system. We carried on with the English common law. We have an independent judiciary that our Court of Final Appeal, the same as the Supreme Court here, has international judges on the panel, Australian, New Zealand, UK judges. Every Court of Final Appeal case will have at least one international judge on the bench of that case, every single case. We have our own currency, Hong Kong dollar, which is pegged to the US dollar. We're a separate customs territory. We're separate members of many international organizations, particularly on the trade front, World Trade Organization, World Customs Organization, and so on. Hong Kong is probably the freest economy in the world. Singapore will not agree with you, or will not agree with me. But the Heritage Foundation for the last 20 years has said each and every year that Hong Kong is the world's freest economy. It's a prosperous economy. Per capita GDP, about 37,000 US dollars. We have a problem of disparity of wealth, much as you do. For many years, the US was Hong Kong's major trading partner, number one. That changed, I think, around the turn of the millennium as China's economy changed. But America remains our number two economy, trading partner. And looking at Japan and Europe, I think it's unlikely that that's going to change anytime soon. Talking to a student audience, I have to tell you, we have excellent universities. We want to internationalize our student body to a much greater extent, and we very much welcome international students for undergrad, postgrad, and PhD courses. If you get a place there, basically you will get financial support, quite generous financial support. We want you there. Apologies. And if you do a full-time course, in one of our universities that we've relaxed our immigration policies so that you can stay on for 1 year afterwards and work, and if you get a job, then basically you could get sponsored for continuing work visas. So come and join us. Let me say a few words about the current protests. It's all come about as a result of the position taken by Beijing back in the late 80s when they were drafting the Basic Law, which is our mini-constitution. China said in the Basic Law that Hong Kong may move towards universal suffrage for the election of the chief executive. But there should be a selection committee to choose the candidates, or to narrow down the candidates. 1990. After the change of sovereignty in 97, we did not get the go-ahead from Beijing for the implementation of this immediately. In 2007, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress in Beijing again repeated what was in the Basic Law, and then a couple of years ago said in 2017 Hong Kong may elect the chief executive by universal suffrage. Thus far, our chief executive has been selected by a small selection committee. The first chief executive was elected by 400 of the great and the good in Hong Kong. The second chief executive was selected by 800 of the great and the good. Our current chief executive by 1,200 of the great and the good. Remember those figures. At the beginning of this year, the Hong Kong government initiated a consultation exercise to seek public views on the mechanics, the process, etc., for the election of the chief executive in 2017. We presented a report on the results of the consultation to Beijing in the middle of the year, and then in August, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress gave their views, which were that yes, we can go ahead with the election of the chief executive by popular vote in 2017, and yes, there will continue to be a role for the selection committee, the nomination committee, who will choose the candidates. At which point it hit the fan. Outrage in Hong Kong, outrage in the international media. Beijing is interfering with the promised full democracy in Hong Kong. Now, what's on the table is that in 2017, Hong Kong will have a selection of Hong Kong candidates. You must, to be a chief executive candidate, you must be a Hong Kong resident, aged over 50 and have lived in Hong Kong for at least 20 years. So nobody's dropping in from Beijing. So there's a selection of candidates, and then the 5 million registered voters in Hong Kong can vote. The New York Times and opponents in Hong Kong are saying, this is a huge backward step. Well, I'm not much of a mathematician, but I would look at the choice of 1,200 of the great and the good, or 5 million people. I think 5 million people is a significant step forward. I'm sure we'll have further discussion on that in a minute. But life goes on. When I was back in Hong Kong a few weeks ago, we were all obviously discussing what was happening and the impact on the economy, and there has been a significant impact on small businesses in the vicinity of the protest areas, and in particular on the public transport, traffic, taxi drivers associations, individual taxis and so on. But to our surprise, tourist figures for October are up, especially from mainland China. It may be that seeing protests against the government in the People's Republic of China is a new tourist attraction. The figures for November will come out at the end of this month, early December. That might give a more accurate reflection of the bigger impact. But in terms of the financial markets, the stock exchange, the Hong Kong dollar, the peg between the US, Hong Kong dollar, and so on, everything has been surprisingly smooth. We've had no need to put in place the contingency plans that have been prepared. So, reasonably comfortable on that front. I think I've probably covered all the things briefly that I need and I want to cover. I'll be more than happy to take questions now.
So, do you want to sit or do you want to stand?
I'll stand.
Okay. So, is it? Okay. As I said earlier, we're going to, wow, that's too close. We're going to have a lot of student involvement, and I thought I would walk around instead of us looking like we're separated from everybody. And I thought I'd ask the first question. According to the International Monetary Growth Fund, growth in China for 2012 and 13 was at 7.7%. And if you go back and look from 2009, it was 9.2%, 2010, 10.4%, 2011, 9.3%. And then for 2014 is forecasted to be at 7.5%, and then 2015 at 7.3%. And my question is, what is the impact of the slowdown in China on Hong Kong's economy?
I think it's had an impact. The Hong Kong economy is very open and is affected for good or for bad by what's happening with our major trading partners. Our major trading partners are number 1, China, number 2, US, then I think Europe and Japan. The slowdown in China's had an impact. Europe and Japan are a dead loss, and we're looking to you guys to keep us rolling along nicely. In the budget speech by the Financial Secretary in February this year, he forecast for our 2014-15 financial year, which is April to March, growth in the area of 3 to 4%. In the mid-year review, he's brought that down to 2 to 3%, and I think most analysts are looking at the lower end of that scale. One noticeable impact coming out of a change of policies in China has been not so much in relation to the slowdown in the Chinese economy, but by the crackdown on corruption in China. Certainly the sales of luxury goods, expensive watches and so on, has dropped dramatically in Hong Kong this year. You take the good with the bad.
And the next question, Trevor.
I think I speak for everybody. Thank you for coming here. So recent economic development in Europe slowed growth in GDP and their currency devaluation. Can you talk about how the U.S. dollar and the strengthening of the U.S. dollar recently will affect the trade between Hong Kong and the U.S. and how it affects businesses and the labor market?
Well, the Hong Kong dollar has been pegged to the US dollar at 7.8 Hong Kong dollars to one US dollar since 1983. Whatever the US dollar has done up or down during those 3 decades, we've gone with the flow, for good or for bad, and we continue to follow that policy. There's no intention to change the peg. So the impact on Hong Kong's trade relations with the US don't change very much, because our exchange rate doesn't change very much. There's a very narrow band with that peg, but you know, if the US dollar drops against Europe, well then your goods and services are much cheaper, and same for us. So we mirror the US in so many ways, mirror the US economy in so many ways. The impact of the change of your currency has a very similar effect on us. The challenge for us is that we're not necessarily in the same economic cycle as the US at any one time. So, for example, I mean, you've got very low interest rates, which you want for stimulation of employment and investment and so on. We've got a housing bubble caused largely by very low interest rates. So we have to suck it up if we want to retain the peg. And retaining the peg and the stability and certainty that it gives us is our #1 priority.
Gene, and I haven't introduced him, this is Gene Hanratty right here. Gene and I have been working together to coordinate this visit, and he works with the folks in Hong Kong. And I was talking to Gene earlier this week, and I guess we were emailing, and I told you that I had several students coming Wednesday night to my house for dinner. Well, these are the 3 students. And so we were talking, and I was asking them about questions for Steve, and this is Sue.
Hi,
and
Sue.
I won't tell Sue's last name because I'll mess it up so bad it'll be unbelievable. But Sue had a great question that we're going to let her ask.
Terrific.
Hi, my question is about the impact on Hong Kong of children born outside the one-child policy from parents from mainland China, and how it affects the government when they go to school there, for example, from the kids from Shenzhen.
Okay. I don't think that it's actually related to the one-child policy in China. The fact is that Hong Kong property is extremely expensive, and in recent years, more and more Hong Kong citizens have been moving across the border into Shenzhen to live, and they have children. But because they will ensure that their child is born in Hong Kong and thus has a Hong Kong identity card. With a Hong Kong identity card, you're entitled to God knows how many years of free education, basically from primary school all the way through to finishing senior high school, free education in Hong Kong. So what's happened is that we're now in a phase where there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of Hong Kong children living in Shenzhen across the border who want education in Hong Kong. So early in the morning and 4 o'clock in the evening, there's a There's a tidal wave of little uniformed boys and girls crossing what is like an international border. And we've got to find school places for them as close as possible to the border. So, we don't really want them traveling all the way down to Hong Kong Island. So this is presenting us with an ongoing challenge, which we will have to address and meet their needs. We have a statutory obligation, and we will do it.
So in 2010, I was on my way to Hong Kong, and for those of you that don't remember 2010, there was a major N1H1 pandemic. And I had gotten on the airplane. We flew from Detroit to Narita, and just outside of Tokyo, and then from Narita into Hong Kong. And I felt a little sniffle and started coughing on the plane from Narita to Hong Kong. Well, when I get into Hong Kong, 2 days later, I have a major sinus infection. And of course, everybody thinks I have N1H1. And so our students are actually headed into Dongguan province, and I decided not to go, and they talked me into going to the hospital and find out that I have a sinus infection. And we found this great sanitarium over close to Happy Valley where the expats go, that they took me to. But my question now, just in the last couple of weeks, a professor by the name of Peter Piot is one of the doctors who discovered Ebola. Says it's only a matter of time before the high volume of Chinese working in Africa bring the disease to China's borders, which Hong Kong, a lot of people going through Hong Kong. So what is it Hong Kong is doing to prepare for a Ebola pandemic?
The Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Margaret Chan, used to be the Director of Health in Hong Kong. So we have second to none contacts with the World Health Organization. We have possibly the best and most extensive recent experience with contagious diseases. We've had bird flu, swine flu, SARS. Now, these are experiences that I wouldn't wish on anybody, but we've had them. We've learned a great deal from them, and our Center for Health Protection, which was established, I think, after SARS, to ensure that we are in a high state of readiness and vigilance for whatever contagious diseases come next, because we all, I think, accept that they're not going to go away. This seems to be something that's going to be one after the other, whether it's Ebola, whether it's SARS. It frankly doesn't matter very much. There's going to be something after Ebola. And we have border monitoring for people traveling in and out of Hong Kong, to try to identify them, people who appears if they may have whatever the particular disease is. We have the contingency arrangements with both our public and private hospitals to address whatever the scale of the particular problem is. But with these kinds of things, you've got to have the arrangements in place, but you don't know what the specific circumstances are going to be. So you've got to have the organisation, the communication, the facilities ready to deal with whatever comes your way.
It was very interesting when we landed in Narita. The Japanese got on to take, we're in a fully loaded 747, and the Japanese get on to take every person's temperature on the plane. And the people who got on were in full hazmat suits. I mean, you could not even see their eyes. They had goggles over their eyes in full hazmat suits. But yeah, they were scared to death that I had N1H1, and the hotel manager met me at the door to make sure I didn't have N1H1, and the person who was with me. And because what would have happened had I had that, the hotel would have been quarantined.
As we did in Hong Kong in 2010?
Yeah.
Metropole Hotel?
Yeah, exactly. So just so you guys know, these two tables right here, and John, I know you have a question, but I'm going to let students do most of this morning, if I can, please. These two tables have a lot of our students that are from Alpha Kappa Psi, which is our business, professional business club. So next question.
Hi. I was just wondering if you can expand about how the current policy changes have affected Hong Kong's economy and how that's affected how you've had to strengthen ties between the Hong Kong and the United States.
Which policy changes?
Just recent
Your
with
American
all the,
policy changes?
No, Hong Kong policy changes.
Okay. Hong Kong is a very open economy. It's a very free economy. And, I think I said the Heritage Foundation, Hong Kong #1 for the past 20 years. America has always been an extremely important business and trading partner for Hong Kong. It's still #2, still very important. I'm not sure what policy changes you're thinking of that you think may have changed the relationship.
My guess is she's probably thinking about policy changes in China that have, so that.
No impact. We have a high degree of autonomy under the basic law, and in terms of our external trading relationships, we have total autonomy. We might be affected, if there was a breakdown in trade between the US and China, then we would obviously lose what was going through Hong Kong. But in terms of how we relate to the US, no impact.
Well, President Obama met this week in China to propose similar to NAFTA, correct? So there was a better trading agreement with China and extended the time of visas there to potentially up to 5 years. So do you think that that's going to change the readiness of people to trade in Hong Kong?
The corollary of Hong Kong having total autonomy in our external trading relations is that China doesn't share with us what it's doing with third parties. So I know about as much about the US-China free trade agreement as you do. And by and large, free trade agreement benefits arise only upon direct trade between the two parties concerned. So if there is a free trade agreement, and if it does get signed and come into effect, and I'm not sure that that is 100% certain yet, then it might have the effect of diverting some trade that currently goes through Hong Kong into direct trade. In terms of the visa policy, my understanding was that and the two leaders reached agreement on the mutual, both granting 10-year visas to nationals of the other country. I think that will have a significant impact, certainly for tourists, because frankly, it ain't easy getting a visa to come to the US. And if you were having to do it every year, you'd think twice about whether the US was the only place you could visit or do business with. So only having to do it once, 10 years, it's a 10-year visa, multi-entry, I think was what was agreed. That should boost tourism and give confidence to businessmen that they can invest in the other country and go and visit their factory or their investment and so on and so forth without the risk of visits being curtailed. So I think that's very positive.
Then we have a question here from our Global Hope students.
Thank you for being here. Can you please comment about the Hong Kong Shanghai stock program that is going to be launched on Monday, November the 17th, which allows foreign investors to get access to the Shanghai trading? And is it a strategic move by the Chinese government to kind of streamline both economies?
An agreement between Shanghai and Hong Kong is something that needs to be mutually beneficial. It's not being imposed on Hong Kong by Beijing or Shanghai. This is part of, I think, Beijing's strategy to continue to reform the economy in China. I think it's connected also to the program of gradual internationalization of the Chinese currency, the renminbi. And what it does is to allow Chinese investors to invest in companies on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange via the Shanghai Exchange, and it allows Hong Kong and international companies through the Hong Kong Stock Exchange to invest in companies on the Shanghai stock market. I've heard a considerable amount of debate about which direction is going to see the greatest flow of funds. I guess an economist would tell you that over time a balance will be achieved. We'll probably get a good idea on Monday.
Steve, I think we're about to run out of time. First of all, thank you so much, and Jean, thank you for coming to Lipscomb. We have very much enjoyed having you here. It's been a great privilege to host you. There are some people I need to thank. There are a couple of people right here, Sonia and Shirley. Sonia is responsible for doing all the centerpieces, and she's just done a great job, and we really do appreciate that, Sonia. Shirley has helped coordinate everything, and just that we couldn't get things done without these two folks. And then right over there is Mary, and you guys responded to Mary. She is the graduate assistant working with me in Global, and without Mary and Shirley and Sonia, this doesn't happen. They have done a fantastic job, so let's thank all of them. And Ray, if you would... I
can do the good part. Yeah, no, thank you very much, Steve. And what we have here, I'll let them see, and you. Actually, I want to give you a piece of Nashville. This is, or Music City. And this is sort of an iconic piece It's a Hatch print, and the Hatch brothers started this printing press, I guess, in 1879. They're now part of the Country Music Hall of Fame, world-renowned for advertising and promoting music and art, entertainment. And I think it's kind of symbolic with Lipscomb. You know, David Lipscomb started us almost a decade of when these brothers started back in the late 1800s. And we also are doing better than ever. I think we're making a world impact. In fact, our little buzz line is this city's our campus and the world is our classroom. And so a lot of similarities, but it's our pleasure to have you here today. We thank you for your insight and all your experience, and again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll do one later.
We'll do one later. Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure for me. As I say, I'm terribly flattered to see so many of you at this time in this weather on a Friday. I hope I can come back on another occasion and update you. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome at any time.
Yeah, Mike had asked me if I could close this in prayer, and before I do, I know all the students, you've already been called out, but thank you very much. Global Hope, we've got MBA, we've got Alpha Kappa Psi. You represent yourself and your peers very well. Shall we bow? Heavenly Father, thank you for this great day. Help us to continue that every good blessing that we give you credit for today. Ask you to bless the work of Mr. Barclay and this university as we promote collaboration and connect people from all over the world, and that we can continue to thrive and live in peace. And this we pray in your Son's name. Amen.